Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to introduce you to the Flask Security extension. So Flask Security is used for basic authentication, for some authorization, and it also has some other features where there's automatic password hashing, easy user registration, pretty much the really basic things that you would need to have security in your app. So I'll show you how to get started with that in this video, and in future videos I'll go into more depth with some of the other features of the library. So to get started with Flask Security, first thing we need to do obviously is install it. So I'm going to use pip-inf to install it. I haven't installed anything yet, so it's going to install Flask for me. And because I want to use Flask SQL Alchemy with this, I'm going to go ahead and install Flask SQL Alchemy as well after Flask Security has finished installing. Okay, so let me install Flask SQL Alchemy as well. Okay, so now that both are installed, I'll go ahead and start up my environment. So pip-inf shell. And what I'm going to do next is get started on writing the code. So since this is a really simple example, I'll just use a single file. I'll call it app.py. And the first thing I need to do is the imports. So of course I'm using Flask, so I want to import from Flask. So from Flask, import Flask. And then I'm using SQL Alchemy as well. So from Flask underscore SQL Alchemy, I'm going to import SQL Alchemy, capital S, Q, and L, also capital A. And then I want to import from Flask Security. So there are a few things that I'll need, but to begin, I just need security. So security with a capital S, and then I'll import the other things later. Actually, thinking about it, I think I need one more. So SQL Alchemy user data store. I think that's how it's spelled. So the reason why we need this is to kind of connect our database to Flask Security. So there are other data stores that you can use, but we're using SQL Alchemy, so I'll be using the SQL Alchemy data store. So now I need to instantiate the app. So app equals Flask and then dunder name. And then for this, because it's security based, and I'll have things like hashing and, well, not quite hashing, but some encryption in places, I'll need a secret key, and also with the cookies. So secret key can it be anything you want it to be, but it should be something that's secret. Because this is an example, I'll just put this is a secret, but obviously you wouldn't want something like that. And then also I need to put the location of the database. So I haven't created the database yet, but I have an idea of where I want it to be. So SQL Alchemy database URI, and then I'm going to put the database. It's going to be a SQLite database, and it's going to be in the same directory as my app file. So I'll just call this SQLite3.db, just like that. Actually, I think that's backwards. Let's do SQLite and then, or db.SQLite3. Okay, so now I can instantiate the database. So db equals SQL Alchemy, and I'll pass in the app. And then what I want to do is I want to focus on creating the models that are necessary for Flask Security. So before I can connect Flask Security to the database, I have to have some database models that I want to use. So the ones that are required are a user and a role. So the user is pretty obvious. This is going to be everyone who signs up for your app. The role just means the role that user is in. So they can be like a normal user, they can be an admin user, they can be a moderator, or any other role that you can think of. So first I'll create the user class. So this is going to inherit from db.model, just like any other SQL Alchemy model. And I'm going to have some information in it. So first I'm going to have the ID, because you'll need an ID for every model that you have. So it's going to be an integer, and I'll say primary key is true. And then after that, I need the information from the user. So for Flask Security, by default, it uses the email. So I'm going to have an email address for the user. So this is going to be a string, and let's say 100 characters long. And then we can add that it's unique, because we wouldn't want multiple users trying to register with the same email address. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. And then we'll have a password. So this password is going to be the hash password, and the hashing is going to be handled for us by Flask Security, but we still need a place to store the password. So this is going to be another string column. and let's say 255 characters. And then we need to know if the user is active or not. So this is just going to be a Boolean. So DB column and then DB Boolean. And then we need to confirm that. So the confirm that tells us the time that they confirmed their account. So we don't necessarily need to use this, but it's recommended by Flash Security. So I'll include it here. So this is going to be a date time column. And then finally, we need a relationship to the roles that we have. So I'll come back to this because I haven't created the roles yet. So I'll create that now. So I'll create a class called role, and it's going to be inheriting from db.model, just like the user model. And I'm going to have an ID column again, of course. So DB column, DB integer, primary key is true. But in addition to this, I need to have roles. So the roles just have a name and a description. So the name of the role is what you're going to use in the code, and the description is something that you can show the user. So for example, you can have a role with the name admin, and then the description would be a user who has authorization to perform any admin actions. So that can be the full description, or you don't have to have a full description at all. It can just be the same as the name. But for our purposes, we'll have both. So the name is going to be a string. So DB string, and let's say 40 characters. And then we'll also have a description. So description. So this is going to be a little bit longer. Let's say 255, just like the password. Okay, so now we need to have a connection between these two tables because a single user can have access to multiple roles. So for example, if I registered for the site, I can be both an admin and a regular user, just so I can see how the site looks in different modes. So because of this relationship, each user can have many roles, and each role can belong to many users. So because of that, we need to have a many to many relationship. So we have to create an association table. And to do that in Flash SQL Alchemy, you create a table directly. So I'll create a value called roles users. And this is going to be a table, so db.table. So it's a little different from a model in the sense that we don't work with it directly. Instead of Flash SQL Alchemy will take care of things for us automatically. So we'll call this roles users, and it's going to have a couple of columns in it. So the first column is going to be the user ID. So we'll call this user ID. And then this is going to be an integer, and it's also going to be foreign key to the user model. So DB foreign key, and then user.id. So user here just references the user class, and it's lowercase because it's the actual table in the database that this is referring to, not quite the model. The model gets converted to a table, and then we refer to that table. So then we're going to have another column for the role ID, and this will also be an integer, and it's also going to have a foreign key, but this time it's going to be to the role table. And I think, let me make sure the parentheses are correct. So we have a DB column here, and we have, let's see. Okay, so there should be a parentheses there. And then this one should have 2. I will just take away this one, so we have 3. Okay, so now we have all of our models set up. So now what we need to do is we need to connect our models to Flash Security. So to do that, use that user data store that I have. So I'll create a variable called user data store, and I'll use that SQL Alchemy user data store that I imported from Flash Security. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass 3 things. We're going to pass the DB object, so DB, which comes from DB equals SQL Alchemy app. Then we're going to pass the user model, and then we're going to pass the role model. So we need those 3 models. And then finally, we can instantiate Flash Security. So with Flash Security, we need to pass the app in the user data store that we just created. So we'll just call this security, and we'll take the security that we imported from Flash Security, and we're going to pass in the app and then the user data store that I created 1 line above. So now that I have this, let me go ahead and create the database. So what I can do is I can start up a Python REPL, And I can say from app import DB. And hopefully there are no errors. And then I can do DB create all. So I have a database now. I can see that in my files. I can go ahead and open it. I can look at the tables and I see there are 3 tables in my database. So role, roles users, and the user table. So now that I have everything set up, I can go ahead and actually create an app. So what I want to do is for this intro video is I want to allow a user to register a new user. That user gets inserted into the database, and then I'll allow that user to view certain pages when they're logged in. So to start, I need to create a route. So we'll go app route and I'll call this register. So this page is going to be one that allows the users to register. So it's going to be pretty simple. I'm not going to have any complicated HTML. So what I'll do is I'll create a new folder for templates. And in here, I will create a register.html, add the basic HTML there. And then what I'll do is I'll create a form. So form is going to be method post. It's going to post to the same endpoint, so I don't need to specify directly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an input for an email and an input for a password. So we'll have email, we'll have input type email. We need a name for it, so I'll just give it the name email, and then the password as well. So we'll have input type password, and then we'll call this password. Okay, so that should be enough. And if I go to register, what I want to do is return. I need to import render template from Flask. So render template. So return render template register.html. So now let's try running this with Flask run. And what I want to do is I want to export Flask env equals debug or development. That's what I want. So Flask env equals development. So it starts in debug mode when I run the app, so I can easily restart everything. And I'll just go to the app location and I'll go to /register. So I see I have email and password, and I see that I forgot a button. So I'll have input type submit. Okay, so now I can type in an email and a password and hit submit, and it will try to submit it. So it says method not allowed because I haven't allowed for post requests here. So what I'll do is I'll add the methods parameter, and I will take in post and get. And then I'll just do 2 different things depending on whether or not the user is posting or getting. So I'll say if requests, so I need to import requests from Flask. So requests. So if requests.method equals post, I want to register the user using their information. So to do this is pretty easy. You just use the user data store. So user data store, which I have created above, and I can create a user. So create user. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the email and the password. So email equals, let's see, requests .form.get email. So this is just the email from the form that the user is submitting. And then I'll do the same thing for the password. So the password is going to be request form get password. And then I just need to commit. So db session commit, because the user store is creating something in the database for me. And then if the registration is successful, what I'll do is I'll redirect to another page. So we'll call this profile for now. So profile, and I'll return render template profile. And then I need to import redirect and URL for. So here, when the user can successfully register, I'll return them to the profile route, and I'll create a file here for profile. So it's not going to be anything special. profile page. Okay, so now let's make sure our app is working. So let's go to register again. So I'll try putting in an email and a password. I'll hit submit. And we see I have a type error. So roles is an invalid keyword argument for user. So I probably just have something messed up. So let's see. It has to do with the word roles. So let me see if I didn't do that. Oh, so here in the user model, what I needed to do is I needed to create a relationship between the user and the roles. So that's why Flask Security is complaining, because I didn't do that. So I had needed to create the table first, but the roles here is something that's within Flask SQL Alchemy itself. I just need to create a connection between the user table and the role table. So what I'll do is I'll create a relationship. So db.relationship. And it's going to be on the role table. And then it's going to have a secondary because this is a many-to-many relationship. So secondary. And we'll have roles users. And then I'll have a back reference. So the back reference is going to be just something that shows us the user information when we're looking at this role directly. So db backref. We're going to have it on users, and let's have the lazy be dynamic. Okay, so let me just break this up a little bit so it looks a little better. So we'll move role down and then move the closing parenthesis there. Okay, so the app has restarted. So let's go ahead and try to register again. So Anthony@prettyprinted.com. And then we'll have a password, hit submit, and then we see the profile page. So this should mean that the registration was done successfully. So what I'll do is I'll open up my database. So SQLite 3, db.SQLite 3, and I'll select star from user. So I see Anthony@prettyprinted.com, but I also see the password is there. So the password is not being hashed for me. Instead, it's being put there in plain text. So to handle this, I just need to make a change. So what we'll do is we'll import the hash password function. So this is going to be from flask_security.utils. We're going to import the function called hash password. And then what we can do in our create data store here is hash the password before we pass it to password. So now we can do Flask run. We'll try creating another user. So go to register, create another password. And we see we need to add a salt for the hash. So what we'll do is we'll go to the configuration and add that. And the salt can be anything. It's similar to the secret key. This is a secret salt. So you wouldn't want it as simple as this, but for demonstration purposes, I'll just make it something simple. So let's try creating this again. And we see missing backend error. So this time we need to install something to hash the password. So it's just telling us what to do. So install bcrypt. So I'll go here, pip inv install bcrypt. Okay, it's done. So let's try running the app again. So Flask run. And then we'll create a new user. Okay, so this time everything worked. So let's go back to the database and take a look. So select star from user. So this time we see that the password is hashed. So now the last thing we want to do in this example is just show some information about the user. So if we go to the profile, what we can do is here, we can say profile page 4. And then we have access to a variable called current user, which is given to us by Flask Security. And then this is just a proxy for the actual user. So the user who is logged in will have an email. So we can just display this. And we also need to protect this route by making it required. So if we go to Flask Security, we'll import login_required, which if you're familiar with Flask login, this is the exact same function. It's just upgraded for Flask Security. So we'll put that here as a decorator. And now when we refresh the page, we see please log in to access this page. We have a login screen that is given to us automatically by Flask Security. So what I can do is say Anthony3@prettyprinted.com, and then I'll put in my password, hit login. And we see user object has no attribute is active. So this one requires some more imports from Flask Security. So here, what we want to do is we want to import something called the user mixin. So user mixin and then the role mixin. So these are going to add some extra features to our classes. So what I can do is DB model, then user mixin. And then for the role, it's going to be similar. So role mixin. So now let's try that again. So let's go to the profile page. It will redirect us to this login screen. And what we do is, so Anthony3, and then the password is just password. And now we see profile page for Anthony3@prettyprinted.com. So I'm logged in after having registered a user, and we can see information about this user, which is just my email address. If I had more information, it would show more potentially, but this is really the only thing I can show. So that's what's being displayed. So this was just a very basic intro to Flask Security. You can do so much more with it. If you want to learn more, right now I have a course called the Flask Extensions course on my site, so prettyprinted.com, and I have an entire section on Flask Security if you want to learn about Flask Security. So if I just go here, you can see, let's see, where do I have Flask Security? Here. So I have more videos covering Flask Security in more depth. But I will also add more videos to the YouTube channel for Flask Security. I think the next one I'll cover the forms, just like this login form that we saw that came out of nowhere. I'll talk more about the forms that are included with Flask Security. So this was just a basic intro. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll answer it. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching and I will talk to you next time.